Greetings, gentles all. Today is, it's early. Been up since about 4:30, something like that. Some of you will have found that I replied to your comments in the wee hours this morning. I think because I'm not working, my body is saying, go to bed at 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere in there. And yet, because I'm not being kind of energetically drained, which is saying a lot, I'm not exerting myself at work, I'm getting a lot of introvert time, I don't need as much sleep. I only need about 6 hours, 5-6 hours of sleep instead of like 8 or 9, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Initially, I thought, oh no, I've gone back to pandemic sleep time. But I don't think that's actually what it is. It's just that when I'm done sleeping, my body's like, I'm awake. It's time to get up. Because I really didn't feel tired yesterday. Which I would have if it were, a matter of like not being able to rest well. But I feel like I'm resting well. Anyway, all of that, just to say, it's very early when I'm filming this. But it's actually such a beautiful time of the day to read. So today is officially day 6 of Kwanzaa, but I'm on day 5. So day 5 of Kwanzaa is NIA. Oh, that's my purpose. It's from today. Sorry. Let me go back to the original one that has the prompt on it. I was just writing down all of them so I could get ready for journaling later. Okay. So the prompt for today for NIA, or purpose. So number 1, my personal purpose. 2, my next step in actioning my personal purpose. 3, ancestral purpose. 4, how I can honor and respect my ancestral purpose. 5, collective purpose. 6, my next step in actioning my collective purpose. And finally 7, how can I best help build and develop my community? All right, so got some interesting answers here today. Don't know where that voice is coming from, but anyway, it's my sort of like, I had a teacher in high school who kind of sounded like that, and so, I don't know, and I loved her, Mrs. Drawley. Anyway, she taught trigonometry, and I just loved her, but she was kind of, she seemed inaccessible, but she really wasn't. She was adorable. Okay, so this was fascinating. First of all, I should say, as I was shuffling, I had a jumper, and I'm always confusing my cards and decks and spirits because I work with jumpers, and sometimes I don't work with jumpers, and sometimes like, it's great, just go ahead and jump. And then other times I'm like, don't jump, I gotta breathe and cut the cards, because I'm so idiosyncratic about what I do. Like we all are, and I can't just settle on one method. I struggle with that. So yesterday I chose all jumpers. Today I had one jumper come out, and I thought, okay, you're going to be the leader of the entire reading, and then I will breathe over the rest of the cards, and that's how we did it. And the jumper jumped out with like the first or second shuffle. So we just had a conversation. The conversation went well. So Young Coin jumped out as the sort of overall read for this. And the way that I interpret them, is Courtney writes a lot in the book about meditative awareness, really being grounded, earthed, detail-oriented, and meditatively present and aware with all that you do. And that has been a theme, right, recurring all the way through all of these spreads, which, is not surprising. I think I've said before, mentioned recently, that my practice, my formal practice has really suffered this year, where last year it thrived, and the first half of the year it thrived. Sort of the third of the year, I guess is the best way to put it. The last sort of 3 months or 4 months of the year were really tough. And I wasn't meditating or practicing nearly like I need to be. So it has suffered a lot. And yet, the other day when I sat down finally just to do a formal practice, thinking, oh no, the weeds have all grown in and it's all just a total, it was not like that at all. It was really, it was just like pouring water on a thriving plant. So that tells me a lot, really, about the roots of what's there and what's the potential is. The young part of Young Coin also puts me personally in mind of the practice of unknowing mind, right? Being willing to come to things with a fresh perspective instead of thinking I know everything. Okay, so that's sort of my guide for the entire reading today. So the other thing that really struck me was, again, I'm reading with a deck that honors and nurtures, nourishes, really kind of glorifies in many ways, but not in a fickle sense. I don't know what the word is that I want. I mean, honor is a big part of it, but honors in a way of bringing glory to ancestral African tradition throughout the entire diaspora. And that is really meaningful. It's why I really love working with this deck generally, and it's why I go to it for advice. And it's generally, that's where I'm seeking advice, or what I'm seeking advice about. It's been very helpful to me in terms of working on my own, uncovering my own prejudices, understanding my own mind, my own darkness, but also just like, I just appreciate that perspective. I mean, that's just a perspective I always have appreciated. What I'm recognizing is, again, the need to take in both the personal message, as an overall or overarching message, but also, the perspective of what can I do in terms of purpose that helps elevate this voice, this perspective, that is uniquely rooted in African tradition, culture, lineage, ancestry, background, and then expressed in all of the beautiful, diverse ways in which that has become parts of other cultures in the world, and contributed richly to them. Mostly, unfortunately, mostly through struggle and adversity. Yeah, that's a big part of it. So the first card that came up for the prompt, my personal purpose. This really surprised me. I never get the Empress card. I am not a mother. I do not have children. So if you're watching this and kind of like, I don't really know Natalie, I just wanted to watch her Kwanzaa video. And I don't think there's very many people out there like that. If you are like that, please comment below. I'd love to know who you are and why you're here. And I'd love to just, I would love to know that. But yeah, I generally don't end up with the Empress card. And yet, I get told by a lot of people that I have a very motherly, and I've always had that since I was a kid, really, a very motherly or mothering type of energy. And I actually take that as a great compliment. I admire that in other women deeply. So, and I admire women who are mothers deeply. I didn't not have children necessarily as a choice. The choice I had to make at a certain point was either, and this will become relevant later on here, was either to, get what's the word I want here? It was either to continue to be in really destructive, really awful relationships and continue within a pattern that was deeply unhealthy and destructive, and threatened to destroy my health and well-being, and to stay within that dynamic in order to find someone willing to have children with me, right? Believe it or not, being young and pretty does not always result in having a plethora of partner choices. And the choice that I made was to gamble, choose to eradicate a pattern that was in part ancestral, and inherited behaviors, both cultural and personal, and choose not to have children or be in relationships with unsuitable partners if it meant not continuing that pattern. In other words, the buck stops here. It stops with me. I'm not carrying it forward. I'm not bringing it to another generation just because of a need on some level to be validated by having children, which is really a big part of what was behind it. The way I'm hearing and reading this one is that the emphasis that Courtney places on this card is really beautiful, and I am going to read some of it because it's Courtney and I love her. I just do. So let's see. I just think her work is amazing. Let's see. So she writes, fertility, creativity, love, nurturing. The Queen Mother is not only partner to the chief, but also an advocate for her people. Today in Ghana, West Africa alone, there exist 10,000 Queen Mothers. In the Kingdom of Benin, the Queen Mother is essential to the well-being and protection of the Oba, or the king, and by extension the entire kingdom. She nurtures and cultivates through outreach as well as with educational, environmental, and health programs and organizations. On a national level, the Queen Mother is a strategist who campaigns for issues that affect those beyond the borders of her community. Her message is value yourself. Value the life you have. Seek things that are beautiful, free, and open. Nurture those around you and share the highest expression of love you have to offer. It's just so beautiful. Nestled in this bosom is a great Venusian energy that becomes the source of all your endeavors. Play, love, grow, and cultivate the best within yourself and the world around you. The lusciousness of your inner garden will pollinate others. This is the message of the Queen Mother. It just is so beautiful. She writes further, if you are receiving the message of Queen Mother, she's asking you to review how you're developing yourself and your relationships. What is the source of your power and creative energy? What are you bringing forth into this world? Oh, this last line. Allow the Queen Mother to come to you like a doula to guide you through the birthing of a new sense of fulfillment and well-being. That was I thought there was one line here that really got me. That was it. Hey, bud. Shh, 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 shh. Henry, come here. Come on, Bubba. Yeah, that was the line that really, really got me. It's so, I am a doula. That's what I do. And it's funny because even when I'm not, being a doula officially, like for people who are dying, it seems to be what I do for people generally. I'm like the healthcare doula. I end up being like the office doula, the patient doula. I advocate for lots of people because it just is very natural. So, I also feel, in part, when I look at this in terms of what is my work. Shh, 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 shh. Henry, you're going to have to calm down. What is my work on a bigger level, right? With it, if this were given to me, what is my purpose in terms of the greater community and as an advocate for anyone who is represented by the diaspora, right? And a part of that diaspora. It would be, I my instinct is, to elevate that voice, and to be almost like a doula giving birth to the space that brings and ushers in that voice and gives it greater power. That for me too is about like voting, right? So I voted, I'm very proud to be able to say I voted for Cori Bush. I love Cori Bush. I just love her. I love her so much. I love everything she's doing. I love her authenticity. I love her just everything about her really resonates. And I'm so appreciate her being in a position to represent, the place where I live. We also elected recently the first Black female mayor of St. Louis. Her name is Tashara Jones, and there was a lot of opposition to her being elected for all kinds of reasons. There was a lot of opposition, and I cannot remember the woman's last name. Her first name is Kim, but she, our attorney general, or prosecuting attorney states, I can't remember her exact title. She's an attorney. She's in a position of prosecuting people. But she was really brought under great criticism for prison reform and working towards prison reform, gentler sentencing, lighter sentencing, and so forth. I actually really support that. And I thought, well, if we're going to support, it's Kim Gardner. Kim Gardner is her name. If we're going to support her, we're going to have to get Black female leadership in, as in the mayoral position, because that's really the only way she's going to be able to continue to do the work she's doing. And my understanding is that Tashara is able to do that and able to stand with her. So, that's, again, in terms of greater purpose, that feels to me to be very much part of that entire message. This will probably be a longer one today because of that. Okay, I'm going to take this dog out and I will come back with the rest. So I'm back. It's much later in the day. Queen Mother. The next prompt, which is the card below her in the Eight of Blades or Swords, is my next step in actioning my personal purpose. So here we have the Eight of Blades, and Courtney references generational trauma in this particular card. And it's interesting that that's the case. I was already going in the direction of that, focusing on both personal purpose and then personal purpose within the broader community in a way that includes and what's the word I want? It's been a long morning already. Uplifts the members of the Black community. So in looking at this one, she points out intergenerational trauma and a particular author who mentions that, and the fact that this person here is experiencing both the present day trauma, as well as the trauma from their ancestors. The same author, Courtney, also points out, talks about how there is also intergenerational trauma on, that affects the people who did the enslaving, on the part of the oppressors. And I definitely feel that. That's something that I feel affected by, and that always hits me, when I'm doing work on anti-racism and just disassembling it within myself, that the pain of that is still very real. Another thing that occurs to me too is that, when it's been a long time since I've experienced, or until recently, it had been a very long time since I had experienced what I would call an episode that resembles PTSD, where you get hijacked. And you may, on some level, inside your head, be very aware of what's going on. And yet, you're so triggered, and literally triggered, because that's what that means. It doesn't mean you're mad because somebody's upset your ego, but literally your nervous system has something flipped a switch or pulled a trigger in your nervous system that is not voluntary. And before you know it, there is action, behavior, words, things are suddenly sort of spinning out of control, because even though there may be that part of you that's still aware of like, whoa, what's coming out of your mouth right now? What are you doing? Come on, stop. There is no ability to, there's a big bridge you have to gap in order to get to the flip the switch and turn it off. And if you're fortunate enough to have that voice that you can rely on that says, whoa, 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 that's not what you intended, is it? Come on, wait a minute. This is a big step away from where we were intending to go here. Or what, you would normally do here. If you're lucky enough, then you have that little bit of awareness that allows you to figure out how to get to that switch and flip it, or at least get yourself out of that circumstance so that you can't perpetuate that situation any further. It's been a long, long, long time since something like that had happened. And then this fall, it happened twice. And I mean, it's probably been 10 years, realistically, probably about 10 years since something like that has happened. And then suddenly this autumn, it happened twice. One was a situation around my dog, because when I first got Noah, I was still in a really horrifically abusive relationship that thankfully did not turn out to be deadly. I still say, had there been a gun in that house, one of us would not be here today, or one of us would have been severely handicapped, or in prison, or both. So, thankfully there were no weapons in the home, but I remember I had already made it clear I was done. I was out of the relationship, and I brought home Noah, and there were all of these horrific fights that broke out around, and in front of Noah, who was already having his own trauma. It's so horrible to even talk about or remember, honestly. And it was just the weirdest thing, because Tom has never in any way been even remotely prone to abuse or violence. Ever. Like ever, ever, ever. And yet, in this particular moment, the dog, poor little Henry, he is such a good dog. But at that moment, there were nachos. And they were on the table. And the dog went to get the nachos, because who doesn't want nachos? And Tom had been looking so forward to those nachos. He was livid that the dog stole them. He was really mad. And he went to a kind of a place of being angry and mad that is rare for me to see. And it shook me. I was convinced he was going to hurt the dog. All of the things that could have happened with the previous partner suddenly came roaring back to the surface. Of course he wasn't going to do those things. And I could see myself behaving that way, and I couldn't intervene. Once I could, and I could stop the reactivity, and get myself out of that circumstance and so forth, I was okay. It took some time. It took about 24 hours for the whole thing to calm down. And by that point, I was able to really hear him. But, it's one of those things where you have to, I don't know, you have to take ownership in those moments of that trauma. And even though somehow you are blinded and definitely handicapped by it, because something difficult is happening. That's maybe not the best example. A worse one was a guy, again, all around the same restaurant, the same nacho place. But I went to go get some more food from that place. I think maybe it's a sign I shouldn't be going there, even though the food is really, really good. But I was in the drive-thru, and they had this weird, crazy drive-thru system going that I didn't know and I wasn't familiar with. And long story short, I inadvertently cut someone off who had been in front of me, and not realizing that he had been ahead of me previously, and he didn't take kindly to it. So suddenly I'm confronted with this very large white man with a beard, and I don't know what his politics were. My brain immediately jumps to conclusions in those circumstances because, again, it's not the rational mind that's coming forward. And it was really scary. I didn't respond well to it at all. He realized that he'd completely freaked me out. So he was there to have an ego trip and prove something, I guess. But once he realized what his behavior had done, you know, it was apparent that he felt terrible. He never apologized. But he certainly couldn't look me in the eye. You know, it was scary. That said, having those experiences was at that time and is now still a tremendous reminder of the kind of effect that trauma has on your life. And when that's going on constantly for someone, and they're struggling to escape it, it messes with every aspect of your being, you know, and it's, I think, in part why people make terrible choices. For all I know, the dude in the car behind me could have been having a terrible day. There could have been something very triggering about what I did. Obviously, there was something very triggering about my lack of awareness at that moment, and lack of understanding of the system that really set him off. You know, something in that situation set him off. But he had the wherewithal, more than I did, at least, to stop what he was doing and back away. You know, I didn't get violent or anything. I just panicked. You know, I panicked. I was convinced he was going to come after me or shoot me or something. The point, I guess, is that it's a good reminder. It's a good reminder. And, you know, in order to be this person, the empathy that's present with the Eight of Blades has to be there. The willingness to work through and beyond my own trauma also has to be there. And that is the way in which, you know, that's my next step in becoming more like the Queen Mother, right? The nurturing that sense of purpose there. Okay, so that's a lot. Sorry, guys. I know it's a lot. It's a long one today. So number 3 is my ancestral purpose, and this is number 3, and this is the 10 of Staffs. So, you know, the 10 of Staffs, suffice it to say, in this particular card, is about dropping all of the sticks that are not yours. You know, don't take on the burdens and the weight of something that doesn't belong to you or isn't necessary. Simplify, let it go. You know, Courtney writes beautifully in her book about, you know, the mott that she places across this person's heart and chest, and about really weighing the heart to know deeply what it is that brings you closer to your truest purpose and what needs to be relinquished, you know, and let go of. So again, I feel like with this one, you know, if it's an ancestral purpose, I think it's maybe a lot more complex than I originally thought. You know, where are we? Ancestral purpose number 3. I think it's in part about, you know, don't take responsibility. Simple. Don't take responsibility for things that aren't yours. Prioritize, let go of anything that's not important. And again, I'm in a depth year, so that is critical. I think there's also a deeper ancestral aspect to that, about making choices, you know, about choosing what do I pick up and what do I put down. What are the things that I've inherited, you know, ancestrally that are helpful, that could be put to greater use and carried forward, versus the things that are toxic, difficult, unhelpful, and could therefore be put down. I don't feel necessarily that I'm being asked in this situation to carry the sins of my ancestors. And there are plenty of sins, some of which have come to me in meditations, that I was made aware of through meditations. Some that I've been made aware of through family members. There are plenty. You know, a lot of my ancestors were ugly people, and just low individuals. I can't fix them. I can't fix what they did. But I can choose to be a better person in my life. I can choose to be a better human being in every other aspect of my life. And where there are positive things, and there are plenty, that ancestors have done or taken care of or offered, I can also pick those up and carry those forward in terms of legacy. Yeah. So there's that. That's the ancestral purpose. And then how I can honor and respect my ancestral purpose is so interesting. It's the 6 of Coins. Again, coming back to striking a balance of some kind. You know, the 10 of Staffs, she mentions that it's similar to the tree pose, and so it's about striking a balance. You know, a 6 is definitely, for me, about balance, 3 and 3. Courtney has, of course, some amazing things to say in this card as well. Let's see. 6 of Swords. Here we go. So she writes, yeah, you know, oh, let's see. What was the prompt again? The prompt is, how can I honor and respect my ancestral purpose? Oh, yeah. So, you know, again, what is it about here too? Nostalgia, ancestors, pleasure, union of opposites, and fulfillment. You know, when we review the past, which can bring both joy and sorrow to the surface once again. We review the past, she said, sorry, which can bring both joy and sorrow to the surface again. Ancestral energies may present themselves to bring comfort. I mean, you can't make this up, right? That's the prompt, and then this is what comes up. We also find a sense of balance in reconciling our lessons of the past with what has recently occurred so we can move forward. Yeah, I feel like, like, again, there's this, last couple of sentences. This card is also an indication that it is time to commune with your benevolent ancestors. Create an altar or simply speak to them. Ask if they are equipped to guide you. If this card does nothing else, it reminds us that we are not alone. You know, I've never had an ancestral altar exactly, but I do kind of feel, I mean, I'm starting to gather enough things to be able to have one. And I have kind of thought about that in past, and I kind of feel like this is a way, you know, that I can honor, you know, accepting the good and relinquishing the bad in order to bring them into balance by balancing them literally through connection with those ancestors. It's not a traditional practice for most white people to do that. And yet we do it in other ways, right? We do it with our oversized cemeteries and going to cemeteries when we do, except now that we're afraid of death, we don't. I mean, we have a very messed up relationship, which we then, of course, have imposed on everyone else, in this country at least, to a large extent. But yeah, I feel it's a possibility now. One of my good friends who is white, her partner is not, has the most beautiful, beautiful ancestral altar that honors the deceased in her life. You know, anyone who dies becomes an ancestor and is honored by that altar space. And I've definitely started to feel a need for that, you know, in my home and practice. So, yeah. So many shrines. Oh my goodness. So many shrines, so many altars. Okay. Next one. Number 5, my collective purpose. So collective purpose, we're back to the 7 of Staffs. You know, really about standing my own ground. I have a lot of unpopular opinions and unpopular views that can leave me open to a great deal of criticism. And I kind of feel like I'm being encouraged each year whether or not I take that up and to what degree depends on the inner strength and inner resources I have. Last year I had very few. I feel I had very, very few. But yeah, I feel like it's a definite sign, stand up for yourself, stand your ground, stand for what you believe in. It doesn't mean don't help other people understand what that position is so that they too might become more open-minded. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. But yeah, I feel like that's definitely my greater purpose, is really to stand my own ground, stand for what I believe in, and kind of, stay grounded and rooted, which she talks about is this sort of downturned, almost phallic looking jewel, and then allow that, jewel of the mind to really sparkle and shine. Yeah. And maybe even protect it, don't let the fear or the ignorance or the misunderstanding, usually it's misunderstanding of others, cause me to back down. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And then this card, the next card, is my next step in actioning this collective purpose. So how do I do that? And it's Mama Blade, right? Or the Queen of Swords. And in this deck, Courtney puts the mamas are, in the position of the king, right? So they are the most masterful. They're more masterful than the king of. And so this is really asking me to step into my power, slice through things that are unreasonable, and really use my words. These are the eyes in this one are Maya Angelou. She modeled part of it also on Michelle Obama. So that's kind of a high, that's a high calling right there. I love Michelle Obama and admire her, but Maya Angelou is a whole different level for me. I love her so much. So, finding the way to use my words, to find words to speak, and sometimes maybe even just to simply blow things away, blow them off, because they're not worth the time and effort or energy, stand in my power anyway, and keep moving forward. Yeah. Yeah. And then finally we have the last card, which is how I can best help build and develop my community. And we have once again the Devil or Temptation card. And the way I've interpreted this one really is, in some respects, playing devil's advocate, right? There have been all of these two of swords popping up in readings. They didn't today. Right, but it means seeing both sides to things. See both sides to things. My tendency is to jump to the conclusion of that the underdog is the right person, the person that's right. But that doesn't include the entire scenario. And in order to understand the situation fully, you have to see both sides of it very clearly to see what is at the root. You can't understand a situation if you can't see it in its entirety. And to see it in its entirety, you have to step back. It's also necessary in that process to confront your own demons, to confront those internal voices that are heavily biased, and often stand in the way of being able to take a more complete view. And in that situation, I think it could be said that is a shadow, right? That is a confrontation of the shadow. So I feel like the way I can help build and develop my community is to continue to confront my own shadows, whether it's to do with race or bias or lack of compassion, which does happen sometimes. We get closed off. The heart shuts down. It can be, and we become like very hardened and determined. It can be really difficult to open the heart back up, but that is necessary. It's utterly necessary. So, yeah, I definitely feel like that's a big part of it. Continuing to confront my own shadows, to create space for others to bring theirs forth without judgment, right? Which is also a way of playing the devil's advocate, if you think about it. It's not a popular idea to allow someone who is really, really prejudiced, especially when they're racially prejudiced, to open up and say anything. But the only way to begin dismantling that and to begin understanding what is it that is motivating that behavior and ideology, not on a bigger level, on that individual person's level, is to listen, if you can. And we cannot ask a person of color to listen to that. It's not right. It's not reasonable, it's not fair, and it's definitely not compassionate. But if we can create that space within ourselves to be able to listen and just give that person some space to be heard, even though we don't agree. To listen doesn't mean that you agree or that you consent. It means that you're willing to put your own ideas to one side in order to genuinely attempt to understand what is going on with that person, without making them less, without robbing them of their human dignity. Again, see also not a popular way to look at stuff. The crowd I hang with is like, no, smack them down, to put them in their place, obliterate them. That's not helpful. That's not any more helpful than what the right is trying to do. I don't fear coming down on the wrong side of things because I know where I stand. Even if other people don't. Even if others can't trust where I stand. That's okay. I just keep standing where I am and holding that perspective because it's all I've got. And that perspective is one that is not going to cast anyone into hell, because they're perfectly capable of doing it for themselves. Most people are there a lot of the time. They don't need my help. But if they want to come out of that hell and into the light and to figure things out from a place that is free of that fear and that suffering caused by their misunderstanding, their bias, it's necessary to be able to listen and to hold the space. Interesting that her ears are their ears. It seems female. There are two breasts here. But the ears are what's open. I hadn't even picked that up. So yeah, and see also why young coin is so necessary, right? This is the mindful engagement, grounded, open. There are questions, but this young coin is willing to put biases to one side in order to find truth. And my experience of having conversations with people who are falling into that space of becoming racially biased you know, the seeds were there already. The current circumstances watered them really, really well and threw on some fertilizer. But when it comes down to it, it's not where they necessarily want to be. There's a lot of a lack of awareness. There's a lot of egoic stuff happening. A lot of things that aren't even related that have somehow been wound up or, you know, pulled together in that space to create that entanglement and misconception. But when we can be mindful and we can be still, it's possible. I mean, people are so capable. You know, it is possible to begin unwinding those prejudices, those ideas, and creating greater space for real understanding, for real compassion, for actual empathy. Again, it's one thing to generalize. It's another thing to actually go to the source. Who's the individual person? And we can read all about it and learn about it, which is also helpful. But when it comes down to it, where is that person in front of you? What is going on there? What is it? Yeah. So it's a lot. As usual. And every day I'll think, oh, I'll do one more because I can get 2 of them in one day. I can't. It's too much. This is so much to chew on in one day. It's really, it just needs its own day. So there won't be a catching up later. But if you're still here, thank you. Again, identify. I'm always welcome, you know, or happy to have people identify who they are in the comments and just say, you know, hey, I'm here, I'm listening. I'm grateful for that. All right, folks, tons and tons and tons of love and compassion to you. Thank you for your listening. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye.